Alright, so Kyle seems to have an intermittent audio issue. You'll hear.
Good night. Good night.
Hey, good night, everyone.
Hello, Conrad. Hello,
tonight we
Ronnie. Hello,
have-
Mark. Conrad, what's up
Good
with all
night,
that
good night.
headroom you have there, boy?
You're probably going to put some text on the screen.
I just
Yeah,
really
yeah.
had a little. Yeah, it's
Let
an
me-
Excel, so I'm just making sure I don't run out of headspace now.
Is the lens? What lens are you using? I'm sure it's the lens you're using. You gotta use MG Masters though.
A 50 mil, but I really thought the way it was set up before, I thought we would
Yeah,
have
it
less
was
headroom, so I was
actually
giving myself
cropped
a little
in
extra.
perfectly before.
Mm-hmm. You're second
Yeah.
guessing yourself as good photographers do.
You know
So
how
while-
it is.
So while we're here, we just want to hit a couple camera news in the industry
Correct.
in a minute, a rapid
Okay.
fire. So we have Canon shutting down major camera factory. Basically, Canon is trying to consolidate and cut back on the amount of cameras that they have and lenses.
What?
I guess they just want
Wow.
to focus more on the biggest profit margin, which is mirrorless, of course. If you jump over to Sigma, well, some of us were hyped and waiting for Sigma to drop some RF lens and some Z lens.
Oh please.
But Sigma literally had all of us waiting just to release one lens
Nothing.
and just rebranding the rest lens to be one particular line, which was kind of annoying. So they dropped the 20 mil for, I think it's E mount, a 20 mil F2.
Is that the F2?
Yeah, the F2
Hmm.
for E mount and L mount. I mean, it was disappointing because we didn't expect all this hype just for one lens. So yeah, so those Sony users could rejoice. If we jump over to Nikon, we have Nikon officially discontinuing the D500.
Oh yes, I saw that.
Yeah, it was a sad day. I remember the
Wow.
time even
That's a
Conrad was
legendary
like,
cam, though.
Yeah, did you light your candle? Did you put your candle or your flambeau outside your house for
Nah.
your D850?
I leave that for
You know that was your camera to love. That was your dream camera.
I had so much pictures saving a wish list of a D8 in different forms. Like, yeah, boy, this is the pinnacle of success. But now it's like D850 that don't exist. So it just shows us that even like the Sony A7 IV, you know, it's exciting, it's nice, everyone buying it. But in a few years it'll be like better on the table, you know. And I just want to jump over to Fuji Film, and they basically took over a spot, and they're like, no, they are number 2
What?
best-selling camera brand in Japan. Fuji.
All right.
Which brand
Overtake
is that?
Sony. Huh?
Which brand
Fuji.
is second
Fuji.
Fuji film.
Who's top? Who's number
best?
one?
Oh, okay.
Well, Sony's still at number 1, but I can't remember what brand was number 2. But they are the second
Wasn't it like
best-selling camera now.
Canon?
Well, it could be Canon. You know, Nikon is lower down. But
But
yeah.
I like how Fuji actually doing their marketing strategy. They're definitely not going after the what Bruce has always called it, the red ocean or the blue
Yeah.
ocean, which is the 35 millimeter sensor size. They
Correct.
going just
For the
sticking
big
to
fish.
APS-C. Yeah, they go in APS-C and making APS-C very viable as a viable camera to actually own. And they're bringing down a video format to like prosumers like us, so making it easier for us to actually get it. So I do appreciate that. Granted, if they do make a 35 a full frame,
Yeah.
that shit will
It'll be hard to pass up.
it will be real hard with the kind of. But then again, even Sony and Canon and them struggling to actually make like a really, really good full frame. So in terms of like feature
True.
sets or stuff like that. So I feel as though Fuji have what, they're like, you know what? Your struggle on that side, we will perfect these two. And
I don't think they're struggling enough. It's all part of marketing. If
I
they
guess
give
so.
you all that they could give you one time, how they go
Mhm.
sell the rest? You understand? It seems like a struggle, but I'm sure in the executive meeting they have to be like, you know what, Give them a little grip this time, and then tomorrow we put on 2 autofocus points. Remember how Nikon and Canon was back to back before Sony came and was like, you know what, hard luck.
It's true.
And Sony didn't kill the amount in terms of lenses out of stock.
Okay.
So it's like,
Officially?
yeah, the couple website lenses for the amount completely out of stock. So yeah, interesting
Good night,
times
Diamond.
ahead.
But when you say Canon actually dropping some what are they doing exactly?
They shut it down its major camera factory in China. So they're trying to consolidate and focus on what making the biggest profit margin.
So you think we will be able to see some amazing stuff for them come next couple of years or so?
For sure, you might get a 70 Mark II in a mirrorless form, you know, because that was a hit for some people.
For real, it was.
All right, so I guess we could. Is there any news? Any more news that you're probably?
Yeah, that's it for tonight.
Wow.
So Conrad, my drug dealer of choice. Anything from on your end that you probably want to share with us?
Nothing much happening this week on my end. I mean, we have the 600X that we recently added to the arsenal, so that'll give us a pretty decent output and still be bicolor. And we just added today the Dizio Film 16mm cine lens. So looking forward to play with that. Probably do a little quick live stream on Instagram. But most importantly, we have Mark tonight, and nice. I knew you want to introduce Mark.
Yeah, I actually, you know what? Hear what he did say that he was a bit
shy.
Not shy. He said he was a bit embarrassed about before. So I'm hoping that I don't do.
That's the daughter leave my office, sir.
But let me just give a brief. Well, it's not really brief because it's a whole page.
Wow.
A brief introduction to Mark. And I should probably start off with Mark has been in the photo industry for 44 years, which is absolutely, yeah, it's absolutely incredible. He's a writer and a photographer based in Trinidad, obviously. And he has been teaching photography for the last 36 years, Mark, is it?
Yeah. Well, for the most part.
Yeah. For the most part. And based on from the information from his website, I believe you said that you started in John Donaldson.
I taught a class at John Donaldson for about 5 or 6 years. And I've been teaching formally at UWI's Film School for the last 11.
For the last 11.
Yeah.
Wow. He has been a picture editor for Trinidad Guardian and acted as chief photographer for the Trinidad Express, which is incredible. I can imagine that's a whole segment by itself, to be honest, just to talk about the difference between Guardian and Express, even if they even a difference working in both places. He is the editor of technewstt.com, which is, I think it's your website as well too. Well,
yes,
which is, yeah, and it's an online publication, which goes deeply into the technology development in Trinidad and Tobago. Mark, welcome to CCS, which is the Caribbean Creative. What does the S stands for again? Oh gosh, Space. Right, I'm a terrible host. But I did get Caribbean and Creative. Unless I
was close enough.
I was close enough. Mark, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the introduction.
I try to be it as short as possible.
Appreciated.
So tonight, Mark, I just want to go straight into it, and I hope you're okay with that, guys. We just want to go straight into it, and it's basically what we want to talk about is definitely copyright. The Copyright Act, as well as any copyright that deals with us as a creative in Trinidad and Tobago, because I feel as though we don't know nothing about copyright, honestly.
We just copy and paste in something we see online.
True.
Okay.
So, my first question is, could you give us a brief description about what copyright is and how is it important for us as a creative?
Okay. Just a bit of background here. And this is one of the parts where I show my maturity in the business.
Not age, but maturity. Got it.
Maturity in the business. When I was a very young man, I was part of an organization called the the Photographers in the Photographic Industries Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, PIAT.
Excellent.
Piat.
PIAT was initially led by Noel Norton. I served on the board of it for about 10 years, and PIAT came into existence initially because of a whole lot of taxes that the government was planning to put on chemicals and supplies and so on. So everybody was involved, the big labs, everybody. One of the things that we did is when the very first Copyright Act was being drafted, we intervened because it was being promoted by COT and placed a big emphasis on music and recording industries. And we basically showed up at every single public consultation to suggest that visual arts needed to be in there. So that was the very, very first Copyright Act. Actually, at the end of that, when that got signed into law, they had an event, and that was the first time I met Kamla Prasad Bisesa, who was at the time the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. So she had a role in making all of that happen and so on. Since then, of course, it's gone through evolutions and changes and amendments. But every aspect of copyright law in Trinidad and Tobago is governed by international conventions on copyright law, primarily the Berne Convention. So that while there are nuances in every country about how it applies, there are some basic things that apply across nations. There are some notable exceptions. Copyright law is a little different in China. British and US interpretations of copyright law differ. And I want to tell you that this is the point I must tell you that everything that I'm telling you about copyright law is based on experience and not my learned profession as a lawyer.
Okay.
So if you want serious advice about copyright law, the first place you should go to is the TT Intellectual Property Office. They are extremely keen about talking to photographers, talking to visual artists, and clarifying matters of copyright.
First time I hear that. No, just saying the first time I heard of that Intellectual Property Office.
The TT Intellectual Property Office, yes.
I'll post
They get in. Anytime you see a major seminar being hosted about copyright in Trinidad and Tobago, the TT Intellectual Property Office, which is affiliated with the World Intellectual Property Office, or WIPO, will usually be involved. I mean, at the drop of a hat, they'll send somebody to talk to you about copyright. So the key thing that you should know is that under Trinidad and Tobago copyright law, we hew to the convention that a work of art is created by an individual artist who is not operating under work for hire, owns all the rights to that creation at the point that it is created. So that is the first thing you have to do. Okay. So you own the stuff unless somebody implicitly paid you under contract to do it on the understanding that it was their property, which is a caveat that we call work for hire or work made for hire.
Yep.
So that kind of is a broad outline of copyright issues. So if there's anything else that you all wanted to pop as questions, I have a few notes about things that I'd like to raise at some point, but I'm happy to answer the questions that I can in a strictly non-legal capacity.
Okay, so just a brief understanding is basically the work for hire. Could you give a definition or the difference between work for hire and non-work for hire, and how does that relate to copyright for you as a person? Or
okay, my baseline for work made for hire is: are you paying my dental plan?
Interesting.
If you are not paying my dental plan, there's a good chance that we're not doing work made for hire. Okay. It doesn't matter how often I show up at that place and how often I work there. If I am not under contract to you as an employee to an employer, We do
Ah,
not necessarily have work made for hire. If I decide to sign a piece of paper that you give me that says all the work that I create is work made for hire and you are not paying my dental plan, that is my choice. But I would have then signed away rights that I otherwise would be entitled to. But the rights of an employee are limited to those rights which are granted. That is, the rights in intellectual property
Mhm.
are limited to those rights that are agreed upon in advance by the employer, but it is their right to give away or to negotiate or contract with. Whereas as a freelancer or a independent contractor or a business operating independently, you have the right and then you negotiate what rights you are going to license or sell or give away.
Okay, this actually goes into my follow-up question, which is like, why is it important to know these rights as a know the copyrights as a creative itself?
Um, I can tell you that I learned that by observation more than being told it
Mhm.
when I saw Noel Norton's business. Noel Norton had a portrait business and he also did photographs on his own and he shot Carnival every year. But Noel Norton's business was based on the fact that what Noel Norton created was Noel Norton's property. Therefore, he was able to license the work, to resend or resell or negotiate new terms for that work over the course of time.
Mhm.
So that's kind of an important thing. It is important to me in my current understanding of it. If you do not have an investment in the work that you create, you
Mhm.
actually have no good reason to keep it.
hmm.
That's an interesting. That's an interesting take on it on a whole. If
Mhm.
you have no investment in it, it makes no sense to keep. Well, yes, I totally
Mhm.
agree, honestly, about it.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, is there
Mhm.
like a general rate? I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but
No,
is
you
there like
got.
a general rate at which one would sell their rights to the client?
Depends on the work at hand and the implicit and assessed value. It like anything. I mean, if you go in Ratans and you don't like the price, um, well, you probably could negotiate in Ratans. But
Cliff.
if you went in Dilemmas and they say that's the price for the crystal vase,
Yes,
you either pay it or you do it out the crystal vase.
correct.
So you have that capacity to decide what the work is valued, and that value may have a value to you as well as a value to the person who is purchasing it.
Mm.
So those are two entirely different levels of value. Um, so I would say in any negotiation like that, you would not be coming from the point of view that this is this wonderful picture that I love so much and I can never get this picture again, as much as it is a position of what is it worth to you? And then you probably start negotiating from there.
That's
Okay,
interesting.
that makes sense.
Mhm. I mean, I can cite an example of it. This happened this was about 24 years ago. I had been to Guyana to photograph a Caribbean beat,
Mhm.
and I had shot a picture of Kaito Falls that some guy somewhere who I've since long forgotten fell in love with this picture. He'd seen it in Caribbean Beat and told his ad agency, I must have that picture for my water appliances and so on. And they were kind of saying, like, well, we could go to this agency or we could get this from this place. And he said, no, I want that picture.
Mm.
And they came to me and they offered me a sum of money, which allowed me to build the kitchen in my house.
Wow.
Wow. How long
Um,
ago was this?
that was
24
about
years.
24, 20. That was in the days when stock photography was a real thing because
Mm.
it was going to be used in multiple ads and hoardings and billboards and so on. Of course, this stock doesn't sell like that anymore. It's extremely rare to have a big stock sale like that.
Wow.
But um, but in that case, the value of it was read to me. I mean, if they'd asked me cold, will you license these pictures for this use? I probably wouldn't have been clear about exactly how to negotiate. I mean, there are apps you can get now that will give you a grounding on what you should charge. But 24, 25 years ago, that was just a picture sitting down in a file, a set of slide pages that I had, and they wanted to license it. And I was like, well, how much are you offering? And they told me, I said, oh, yes.
But it's yes at that time. But
Oh, yes, at that time. You ain't getting that kind of money for that picture now. I mean, that picture is
Wow.
probably an iStock shot by somebody last week selling for 50 cents.
right.
So that's definitely then, not now.
Wow.
With the knowledge that you have now, would you have negotiated something different 24
Oh,
years?
yes. Oh,
Okay.
yes. But of course, the resources weren't the same.
Okay.
I mean, for 99 US, you can buy an app where you could ask the person where you're using it, how long will it run. You can plug that into it, and it will just spit out a figure for you.
Okay.
And the people who are selling the picture know this app, and they would kind of go like, yeah, okay, because it's kind of a basis on which everyone operates.
Okay.
What's the name of the app?
What's the name of?
The app.
There's a couple of them. There's one called BlinkBid. And of course,
Okay.
because I'm on camera and talking to you now and trying to sound erudite, I cannot remember the photo quote.
Photo
Okay.
code.
Photo
Good,
quote,
good.
yes. Yes.
Guys,
I
I
had a-
wanna move into my next question. And I think
Sure.
this might be a little more of the controversial side, but I want to go into like copyright infringement and what is considered a copyright infringement, Mark, for you, or
You take
in
my
general,
stuff. You take my stuff without asking me, and you derive value from it.
derive value from it.
Mm.
And well, that's in a nutshell. But and in your experience, how do one settle with these infringements? And is there another infringement other than what you just described, or is that just the common infringement altogether?
Well, I mean, it's a broad brush description,
Yeah.
but infringements are essentially someone extracting value from your property without your permission and without your consent.
And profiting from it, or
Well, if they're extracting value, they're profiting from it somehow.
correct?
You know, I mean, they're not like hanging it up in their bathroom to admire and so on,
Right.
which would be weird and creepy. But you know, I could say, well, okay, that's limited value. There's in fact I would consider it a landmark piece of legislation
Mhm.
that's been read into the books. There was a judgment
These-
recently
Infringement.
that was the result of a case brought by the photographer Sean Driggs against a guy who was running a fashion show in Tobago. He'd taken Sean's picture of the dying swan and used it in advertising. And I mention it as a kind of landmark case because we can talk about rights until we're blue in the face,
These
but when someone tries a case before a court, it then becomes case law. And it
Right.
becomes something
Precedents.
that people reference.
yes.
So that was a biggie because I have to say, after that case went down, all of my requests for payment because of infringements have been significantly lubricated.
Nice, nice, nice. I like the term.
Yeah. Just in the last 2 years ago, there's a project that I've worked on my own Steam, personal project, photographing Calypsonians. I have whimsical reasons for doing it, but so I have this collection of pictures of Calypsonians, and there are two instances of people deciding to do things for the calypso and the culture, and using it in a commercial or quasi-commercial way, who had to pay me. And I asked for essentially double my fee because we never argued. I mean, I just said, this is the fee, and they said, okay. But my rationale, had they asked, if you had asked for it, this would have been the fee, but
Right.
you took away my right to negotiate.
Okay.
Therefore, this is my fee. It's not a punishing fee. I mean, I'm not out to beat up people over the head and so on, but it's enough for it to sting and make people think twice before they say, yeah, I get off the net. I could just put that in an ad, man. And somebody says, wait. You remember what happened the last time we do that? Well, no, let's not do that. So there's that.
Okay.
Question: Do you see? Well, I know after the litigation that you with thing, but do you still see that people are still doing or the taking the infringement, taking other people's photo, putting it as their own? Is it like they just don't fully understand what they're doing is wrong or something like that, or they're just oblivious, or they just don't care?
There's a
No,
s-
until present day.
mm. There's a certain amount that I think still obtains, particularly on social media. Um, but most of it is kind of innocent. And I'll sometimes tag people and say, "Hey, that's my picture. Just put my credit on it," because the day is long and finite, and you can't beat yourself up over everything.
Okay.
You have 500 followers. I don't really consider that advertising to the masses,
Right.
but just credit where it came from. Um, I find that there's a greater sense of awareness among professionals and a greater sense of awareness around companies, even if they don't demonstrate it by doing due diligence before. So I would not like to cast aspersions and suggest that they know full well what they're doing and they're trying a thing,
Hmm.
which is a possibility. As much as it may be, we was in a real hurry and we just scramble up some pictures to do this thing, and we real sorry, and here look your money. Um, so I can't say how that process is functioning now, but there are people who are genuinely ignorant who should know better of the fact that if you have a folder with pictures that you pull down from Facebook,
Hmm.
that using that for a series of promotional things or ads is really not a good idea at all, because you don't know who it belongs to, you don't know where it came from, you don't know anything about it, but you're just using it. Um, so there's still a kind of failure on that front, but I find that when people are caught out now, they tend to be very conciliatory, whereas before it used to be very hostile. People would say, well, if you do that, you ain't gonna do more work from we.
Play
Um,
business.
okay. Um, this of course upset them even more. Um, there
Arrogance.
was a time in this business when people like Abigail Hadid, who is very insistent on our copyright, and I were known as them people. They fussy about the copyright. Don't deal with them.
Okay.
And you shrug and say, well, okay, fine. Um, you live with it and you go ahead. The other aspect of it is that there's some commercial things that you do where even if you retain the copyright, the chances of it increasing in value are trending towards zero, because it is such a specific thing in such a specific space. A product shot with Corel pots and pans, you take the picture, they put it in an ad. Um, yes, I've retained the copyright, but you know, unless this is some bizarre thing that crops up in the future where they want a picture, a silhouette of pots and pans in the future, it's just limited value.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there are things that you photograph quite innocently and they turn out after the fact to have great value. So, it's kind of it's very hard to say decisively.
It's more like a chance, and I guess it's more like whose person sees the value in the work itself. So it's like something
Mhm.
like that. Yeah.
But before you go on, see, and
Yeah.
what I would ask is like, what is the proper procedure? So, for example, let's say I took a picture of a late prime minister, and for some reason they have a series that's being published, and I
Mhm.
see Guardian newspaper has my image that I might have shot 10 years ago.
Mhm.
What is the route do I take in a situation? Is it that I call him on the phone, have a lawyer send them an email? What does someone do? The average creative might just see somebody using their photo and they'll be like, well, I know what to do now.
Right.
Mhm.
I had no money for no lawyer. I can't do nothing about this.
That's a good question.
Yeah. All right. So let me just step into that for a bit.
Hmm.
Um, I get annoyed when newspapers that I do not contribute to use my photographs. Um, but here's the thing. Newspapers are kind of covered by the concept of public interest.
Okay.
So the harvesting of pictures for what is essentially local news, kind of single-use local news, is a difficult thing to beat up over because circulations are not as large as they used to be. To be honest, a picture that goes viral locally on Facebook is going to have a lot more people seeing it than a picture that appears on page 2 of a local newspaper. That's just a fact.
Okay.
So I might say, look, that picture that you use, that's my property. I know you probably want to put it online. You need to credit me online for it to go along with the story that you've run. And please, contact me in advance because these things come from a place. The nonsensical thing that people say is, I got it from Google, as if Google is a place.
Yes, Google is its own entity.
Google is a list.
Yeah. Correct.
When you clicked on it, you went somewhere. So I try to make those consciousness raising things where we have a discussion and say, please don't do this. I mean, when I was at the Guardian, I was up at the Guardian up until about 4 or 5 years ago. The Guardian stole my stuff.
Wow.
And I was like, let's not get upset about this. Let's call this use that you hadn't anticipated, and this is what I'd charge you for it. And we'll be civil and organize it like that. So it happens. But newspapers are really the least of your problems. I mean, they do have an appetite for a large number of pictures, but very few of those pictures actually end up going online unless they have a certain kind of profile. I am much more concerned about willful abuse of copyright on social media and platforms like that, because this actually happened to Maria Nunes recently. A picture of hers appeared in a media house, not Newsday. I work for Newsday, so they always like me to say not Newsday, and they put it on Instagram with their watermark. Now, here's what happens when that happens. They haven't credited her. They put their watermark on it. They have clouded the waters as to who owns it. So when someone comes along after the fact, they're like, oh, it's a news, is a that paper or that broadcast house picture. Let me get in touch with them for the rights. And if somebody at that broadcast house really doesn't know how they got the picture, they might license the picture. Right? Say, yes, we could license that. And it becomes this weird, torturous thing because people don't like the effort. I can't say they don't like to do it. They don't like the effort that's involved to attribute something. And that's kind of important. So I would say that any discussion that I would have with a media house about using pictures of mine would be around attribution, that it is correctly labeled.
Okay.
See, and I think you're muted.
I'm so sorry. My follow-up question, and when I muted, I was like, please, Sion, please don't forget to unmute this thing before you talk. My follow-up question to that is, how do we protect ourselves from any sort of infringement, may it be anything altogether, social media, somebody stealing it, whatever, maliciously or unmaliciously and stuff like that? How do we actually protect ourselves from something like that? Even though I know it probably wouldn't be full 100% protection, but how do we protect ourselves so when it do happen to us and stuff like that?
Taking into consideration the recent events about the article where the minister would have made a particular statement in regards to photographs and their use, basically.
Okay, so that is another
that's
thing.
A whole topic by itself.
Yeah, but let me deal with this thing.
That is fucking up.
You cannot bulletproof a photograph from use.
Okay.
That's just not possible. Um, what you can do are take preemptory steps that I consider to be. I've been doing this with my pictures for about 14 years now. You embed metadata in your images. First step. Some of it gets stripped out when it goes on Facebook. Different social media outlets will take different parts of the metadata out. But you want to embed, and I mean, this is actually a part of my workflow. Before I even look at pictures, I have a standard metadata template that gets embedded in them. So that's the first step. You can't share stuff online without some measure of risk. So if you don't want anybody to steal your stuff, don't put it online.
Makes sense.
Once you put stuff online, you are in a balance. You're balancing the value of having it online with the potential for theft. That brings us to watermarking.
And I hate that.
Yes, but you
Honestly.
can.
Same.
I always tell folks, put some kind of watermark on it
Okay.
because people don't understand looking for metadata.
Okay.
If a serious graphic designer look at me and say, "Well, I get the picture and I didn't see no identification," I was like, "You lie."
You didn't look.
No. But when the picture opens in Photoshop, it actually
Yes.
tells you copyright
Correct. Yes.
if you
That's true.
embed it properly. So you lie. But watermarking signals that the picture has an owner who is interested in people knowing that he or she is the owner. So that said, when it comes to watermarking, again, you're balancing how big and obvious a watermark versus how much you think you can protect the picture.
Okay.
So, people slash watermarks straight across the middle of the
God.
picture.
Yes.
And I mean, I contribute to Newsday, and my arrangement with them is the standard Newsday watermark straight across the middle of the picture. I say, no, I'm going to take my chances. Just go panorama picture. Because I need the picture to be seen the way it was meant to be seen. And when I was framing it, it didn't have a big
A
Newsday
big
watermark.
thing, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But once that happens, it's easy to crop out. It's easy to clone out. People who are going to thief are going to thief.
Okay.
And even if you drop it really big and so on, they'll just clone it out. So there's a quality of risk to it. My response to that is to make the watermark pictures available widely. So if I'm posting, it goes to Instagram, it goes to Facebook, it goes to my website, and everywhere it's got the watermark. So anybody who says, I didn't see no watermark, I could point to 3 places where it has a watermark. So that same Google you're talking about is also going to pick up all those instances. So you didn't really try terribly hard, or you ignored things you didn't want to see.
Because
And
we
guys-
have a case, and maybe I'm going to say the same thing.
What's
A
that?
guy just said that how a media house took a clip from one of his funeral live stream,
Oh, wow.
and it was on the 7 o'clock news. Well, I asked him now if he collected his check. So maybe, I don't know if anything could be done at this late moment.
What does this person say? Douglas? Half-eyed?
Yeah, if
Douglas
someone
half-eyed.
uses part of your picture, like a face photo, and uses a composite image. Douglas, let me finish with this one first.
Yeah.
That's tricky because it kind of drifts in the direction of public interest. I'm going to assume that it was a funeral of someone of some significance that was newsworthy. Properly, they should have asked permission to access and use a clip from the stream. Again, that's one of those calculations. How much energy are you willing to invest in something that may not have enough of a value return? A lot of the time, I just settle for sending a letter or email. I find who's the right person. I send an email, say, look, this happened. I'm not happy about it. Please don't do it again.
Okay.
At the very least, that registers that they have been warned. And that has value in legal terms as well, that you have signaled that you don't want this done with your work, and you've served notice that you're unhappy about it. So
But
it's like not a
if you don't
pre-action
mind,
protocol letter,
Okay.
but it is precedent.
It could serve as
It serves as
warning.
a
It could serve
precedent
as
that this happened previously. You were warned previously. Judges have a way of looking at that sort of thing and saying, "But you're stubborn or what? You man tell you, your head hard, stick brick in your ears."
That's
what
like
about the
things.
monetary side though? You wouldn't suggest someone seek monetary, I don't know,
compensation
just
for it. For
Right up,
compensation, yeah?
straight off the bat.
Depends on the use.
Okay.
If it's part of a newscast, may not be worth the effort. When I have gone after things like that, they have been used as advertising or promotion for a newscast. That I consider to be different. The newscast, if you use the picture in the newscast and say, well, all right, that's the person we're talking about there, I might kind of go like, yeah, it would be nice if you give me a credit, but I ain't gonna beat up over that. But if you do a whole ad with your logo and you put that on Facebook and you say, well, we having this segment with this person, and look this picture of this person. Yeah, I kind of treat that differently. I consider that to be straight up advertising and taking a commercial interest in the work that's involved.
Okay.
Again, that's just me.
Gotcha.
Some other
Gotcha.
people may take a hard line on it.
And just to interject, Conrad, could you explain to them how photographers could get metadata into their photo, just as simple as setting up your camera and stuff like that?
Oh, you're asking me on that?
Yeah,
Sorry, I
just
wasn't
to give them
aware.
a brief example of like how to set up
Oh,
metadata to be captured into your photo, and it's easy through just setting up it in your camera. Can you just give
well,
us a
you could
little
actually
brief?
do it. You could actually do it from both ends. I believe you could set it up in the camera. There are in
Lightroom
most
too.
recent cameras the option to put in the copyright protection right there. Usually lower down in the menus. But from my experience, you could also put it when you're importing the image into the computer.
Yep.
I tend to prefer there because you never know when someone else could use your camera, and that brings about a whole host of issues and stuff.
Oh yeah,
But
that's actually true.
again, I prefer
Yeah.
to do it upon import. That's my
Okay.
personal preference, and it's usually marked there, like you said, in the metadata.
Mhm.
If you look in let's say in Lightroom, if you're doing photos, I believe there's a section there for metadata, and there's also
Correct.
when you're doing an export,
Mm-hmm.
you could ensure the metadata is embedded as well. You could even customize it. Some persons put the year, so you would know that it was taken in this particular year and stuff. Again, that's from my limited
I
experience.
mean,
I
I
don't know if
think
some.
I do something similar where it's both in camera and I have a kind of import automated thing that just adds data to the files what it imports and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Guys, do we want to see if we could answer any questions from our audience if there's
Oh,
any?
Douglas had asked something.
Yeah.
Douglas had
Yes.
asked something about
Composite image and using part of his
composite image.
image.
Yeah, okay. So that's actually a very specific area of copyright law, and it's governed by how transformative the final composite is. So that a composite that leans heavily on the source imagery can be in a questionable position, but a composite image that um, significantly transforms the idea, concept, and perception of the bits and pieces that make up the whole can be argued successfully as a new creative work.
Like for example.
Okay, I can tell you some examples of some things that went very wrong. There was a guy whose name slips me, who began going into people's Instagram feeds and screenshotting them and enlarging them to like 9 feet big. And he had a big exhibition.
Yes, I remember that from Instagram. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that.
Wow. Locally?
No. It was
No, it's
international
abroad.
thing.
There's another guy I think it's Prince. Prince is the name that I'm remembering here, who did close-ups of old Marlboro advertisements in magazines and blew those up to like 15 feet wide and cited them as transformative. And the original photographers went after him as well and actually did not succeed
Okay.
because the work at that size and scale and the way that it had been cropped was deemed by the court to be transformative. So it's a little bit tricky. But you see, photography is really great source material for someone who wants to create art, not just the picture itself. There have been people who make sculptures based on pictures they like, paintings based on pictures that they like, and they're not adequately transformative. And courts have ordered that the work be destroyed and that any profits that were made revert to the photographer. So it's one of
Nice.
those things that even in very art savvy and art aware countries can be a bit difficult to follow. And of course, the state of modern art is extraordinarily confusing.
It's very
Yeah.
what's the word that they usually do? Gosh, I'm gonna say like it's very basically is based on perception. Like this is what I think it is, and it's
Mhm,
like this is what this person think it is. This is what that person think it is, and stuff like that.
mhm.
Uh, do we have any other questions from the viewers? Because I want to get into the carnival controversy with the minister, and if you don't mind, so if there's any other questions from the viewers, we could go. Okay, would NFTs help identify the copyright holder?
NFTs are actually a different iteration of the art form. A photograph that gets turned into an NFT becomes an object in its own right. So the nature of NFTs is that once you decide how many NFTs you're going to mint, whether it's one or five or three, those are the originals. So those NFTs are the ones that hold the value. However, a million other people can have the same image,
Okay.
but they are not registered on the blockchain, and therefore they are not the original. So that too is a little nuanced thing that I don't entirely claim to understand conversationally. So I will tell you that's what I understand the case of play to be with that. Um, to state of play to be with that.
Because I understand that an NFT, there's if you buy or take purchase into an NFT, there should also should be some sort of thing that goes to, or you're supposed to be entitled to something. It could be every time you flash this NFT at somewhere, you get free food. I mean, something that goes along with the NFT. I think those type of NFTs where there's some sort of something that happens or something that you're privileged to whenever you get that right. I find those type of NFTs would make more sense rather than the fact that you buy and something a picture and you just have it there and like in the quote unquote metaverse. It don't make any sense to me. Like I remember somebody bought a yacht, a digital yacht for the metaverse, an NFT yacht, and I'm like, why you have so much money to waste on a yacht that you're not going to be using anytime soon? Anyway, it's ridiculous the way how the digital realm is actually transforming into it. There's some good stuff and there's definitely some ridiculous stuff, to be honest.
Welcome to
Um,
modern art.
correct. Where everything is based on their perception, I guess.
Hmm.
Guys, is there any other thing, or could we move on to
No, I think we
the
could
other?
jump right in.
So
You go ahead, man.
basically, just to move on to the next topic, which is about the copyright and the carnival bacchanal with the minister of, is it not tourism? What is it? What's
He's the
his
Minister of Tourism.
tourism? My gist of it, and I could be wrong, but when I was reading all this thing, he had a problem, or he is sort of like implying that when we take photos of scantily clad women and post them up, and think it kind of making them like if we are the ones that predator in them, or like selling them, or being one that contributing to the violence against women and stuff like that. I mean, that's what I took away from it, and I know there's more. But what's your view on what is he trying to say, and what is actually the right thing to do?
Okay, so the Minister of Tourism had a multiplicity of concerns,
Okay.
not all of which are directly related to each other, and not all of which, well, by his own admission, he clearly understood. So let me start by saying that when it comes to rights, there are three things that any photographer should be concerned with. You should be concerned with what is moral,
What is more?
what is ethical, and what is legal. So, what is moral is a kind of personal judgment thing. It's like, I believe in these things, therefore, I do not believe in those things. Therefore, these are things that I align myself with, and these are things that I wish to be seen as supportive of, and these are other things which I condemn or dislike and wish to be seen as not supporting. So, those are moral issues. Those are your personal, that's your personal view of the world and the way that you articulate your space in it. There is ethical. Ethics has a lot to do with moral, but ethics is a projection on civil society. In ethics, you are operating in the context of other people. You are saying that you want to deal with people. I mean, there are biblical things that cover this. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Correct.
Behaving ethically is also, I think, a core of good business. Nobody really wants to deal with somebody who is unethical unless they're giving away free money, in which case you'd probably want to know where the money comes from. But maybe if you don't bother about ethics like that, you'll just take the money. But in terms of ethics, I think generally speaking, people prefer to deal with people who have demonstrated an ethical stand that is in harmony with what we consider to be proper behavior and a proper way of doing business in civil society. So there is ethical. Then there is legal. Legal is what you are required to do by law. And required to do by law sometimes has no relationship whatsoever to ethics or morals.
Okay.
So there are things that the law allows you to do that people will say, but how you going to do that? You say, well, you can't arrest them for that. That's not legal. You could do
It's
that.
legal. Yeah. It may not be ethical or moral, but it's technically
Yeah,
it's within
it's
the
legal.
law, so he's
Okay.
legal.
So when the minister asks a question like, are there standards that are applied to professional photographers? He's expressing doubt, I think,
Right.
that a craft, a art, a trade, a business, which has operated in this country for significantly more than 80 years, has been incapable of policing itself, of calling out people who are being unethical or immoral or just plain illegal, and saying, stop doing that, or, that they are incapable of self-policing. I do not believe that to be the case. There are messy things that happen all the time. There are messy things that happen in all businesses, all relationships. Any organization that is based on similar principles, or in our case, similar technical and tools and so on, there will be people who will be exemplary, and there will be people who are significantly less than exemplary. I don't know too many instances where people have demonstrated that they operate with no regard to what we consider decent moral or ethical standards, who are celebrated and championed in society. Of course, it does happen sometimes when somebody is wildly popular for something and people are willing to oversee that. But I find in general that in the time that I've been involved in photography, which is an entirely appalling length of time, thank you for reminding me of that, Sion. Generally speaking, it has been a successfully self-policed group of people operating in the space. So he mentioned, well, he asked of Creative TT and so on, and Creative TT did mention that the Photographers Guild, the associations weren't mentioned, but it was the Photographers Guild, and Sarita is going to murder me because for now, right now, I cannot remember the name of the other organization.
PAT, Photography Association, Trinidad and Tobago.
Is that the formal name?
Photography.
TTPS, yeah, the Trinidad and Tobago
TT Trinidad and
Photographic
Tobago, the other way around.
Society.
Yeah,
Yes.
that one.
Yes. They have both made representations to Creative TT about assessing the nature of photography in Trinidad and Tobago, and having discussions about how photography can better serve the development of the country. Because at this point, photography is this weird sort of red-haired child in the basement that everybody says, yeah, we need to have that, but we're not really sure that we like having it, and send the food for them down in the basement. And I think both of those associations would like us to be more front and center, contributing in meaningful ways to national dialogue and discussions about things that we participate in. We participate in fashion, we participate in international weddings, we participate in industrial photography. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we do, and I think they would all like to see us participating as professionals in that space rather than as people get hired and then forgotten. So that was one thing he said. So I think that Creative TT suggested that yes, we're aware of these associations and these photographers, and while we're not able to do things that we'd like to, because basically nothing in the arts and government has a budget that allows them to do anything, they're aware. So I think he asked at the end that they supply him with the law as it applies to photography in a public place. And all he really needed to do was Google that. And the first thing that comes up is the TTIPO's explanation of the fact that there is no law that governs that. In fact, we do not even have something that is known as image rights, which I actually thought we did. I thought we did for many years. And then a copyright lawyer said, no, we don't have that. Image rights are, I take a picture of you in a public place and I put you in an ad, and you say, you put me in a situation where I look like I'm endorsing beer, you're damaging my image rights and so on, or you didn't ask my permission to use my face. Right. You have no locus standi. There is no law governing that.
Wow.
Not even if someone is of let's say a public personality.
No image rights.
Wow.
And this is where the ethical and moral part of it comes in, because he said technically it's legal to do what you did,
but that doesn't mean it's
moral or ethical. But how come we don't have something as similar as image rights? Because I honestly thought till today I thought we had that. So something similar to that in effect.
Yeah, I got my wake-up call about 2 years ago.
Wow.
I was kind of like...
Can you tell us about it?
Although it was a radio discussion, I was like, and the copyright lawyer said, excuse me, we don't have that. I was like, how do you mean we don't have that? They said, no, we don't have that. Wow. And since then, I had discussions with the TTIPO, and they said, yes, it's true. We don't have that. It's just not in the law.
Are we going to get it?
Well, again, are we going to get it is a big thing. There's a lot of nuances to Trinidad copyright law that are unique to Trinidad. Like we have a whole bunch of law covering carnival.
Music and
not just music, the rights of masks and how costumes are to be registered and a whole bunch of stuff like that. I don't think any copyright law in any country is perfect, but again, that comes back to self-policing. That comes back to moral and ethical standards. I do not think I want to be the company with an advertising agency that puts a picture of somebody in an advertisement and then gets hammered on Facebook and Twitter, because that would kind of be like paying for pong.
Mm-hmm.
So on a moral and ethical basis, you probably want to not do that. So again, self-policing. You wouldn't do it intentionally. You might do it by mistake and say, "Yeah, I thought the woman had signed the contract. The photographer told me he signed the contract, but he didn't really have the contract." So that sort of thing can happen.
That's
But
what
I
I want
think
to ask next.
any sensible agency, any sensible company would want to say, "We have all our ducks in order. Everybody has a signed contract." I mean, that's just the way ethical business is done. And more so now, because the consequences of behaving immorally or unethically are that you get hammered in public by hundreds of thousands of people who are happy to drag you.
Definitely.
True,
In a
Well,
heartbeat.
true.
which is no fun.
So, would
That's
you
no
say
fun.
model releases are null and void in Trinidad?
No, that's not model releases. Model releases
Okay.
are how you certify that you have permission to use a likeness in a specific commercial instance. So
And
that is prophylactic.
and then
Once you,
technically, you don't
Mhm.
even need to do it because there's no law that says
Well,
you need.
yes,
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
If
yes.
there's no need to
But
have image
again,
rights.
if that is the case, who gonna model for you?
True.
Who gonna pay any ad?
I do have a MRA for all all models that I do, and when I ask them, I was like, "Do you wanna? You need to sign this?" And they will be like, "Huh? What's this? We don't do this for other people." I was like, "Well, you do this for me because I don't want to come 5 years on the line and then you coming to me and telling me, oh, kind of backing out." It's like, okay, protect yourself, please
Mhm.
protect yourself.
But morally, you might do the right thing and be like, okay, they asked me not to show hair, so I will not show no pictures of them.
I mean,
Again, you don't want to be
That's what
drag,
I'm
the
for.
guy who is abuses trust
correct. You don't
and
want to get dragged.
you don't want to be that guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
repetition is important for us
mhm,
in this
Some of
space.
us have 7-day memories too, eh?
yeah. So I think the minister was also very concerned about people who are inebriated not giving consent or being unable to give consent to their picture being taken in a public place and presumably being published and circulated.
Mhm.
So that's why we have editors and picture editors who will kind of look at a picture and say, yeah, we don't really need to publish that picture. That's not adding anything to the public discourse, and people kind of know that goes on. Though I have to say, there are times when it goes differently. I remember when I was I was holding on as the acting chief photographer at the Express, um, and I was responsible for the Sunday paper at that time. I used to do the Sunday paper, and then when the chief photographer became ill, I took over for several months at a time. And there was this enormous hue and cry the morning after Panorama Semis, which at the time was in San Fernando, over a picture of a young woman on the shoulders of a man at Panorama, and they were doing what we used to call at the time the reverse donkey. Yes. And there was a big hue and cry in the paper about, who put this picture on the front page, and the woman calling and she wanted to sue the paper and so on. And I had left the office, and the person who put this picture in said, well, it was me.
Oh wow.
And it is not who you would have thought it was. It was a very quiet, sainted, extremely religious young woman who had put it on the front page of the paper because she felt people must know that this sort of thing is happening. We have to let the public know. So the whole thing boiled down.
But the caption underneath it did not represent what the intent of who put
Well, it
on the
was
thing.
just, a couple dances at
Right.
Panorama semifinals. The captioning is very neutral. Well, in newspapers when I was to be involved, it was just like just enough information to tell you what you could not gather from looking at the photograph.
Great.
And I remember that one as being like, wow. Of course, they didn't discipline her because she had an absolutely perfect faith-based reason for why she put this picture in the paper. But it was quite remarkable. She did not do it because she was scurrilous. I mean, this is not a whiner girl. This is a Bible girl. So there was no scurrilous or lascivious reason for it at all. But it happened.
So I have a question. The fact that the minister is now realizing certain things that we thought that we actually have, and I assume since he didn't do his Google research properly, he realized that there's a lot of laws that or rights that actually needs to be put in place. Is he going to do anything about it, or is he just going to be like, oh, well, I didn't know. Okay, let's move on.
Well, he is talking about this in the context of a very specific law, the Sexual Offences Amendment Bill, which is meant to tighten up Trinidad and Tobago law when it comes to modern infringements of people's rights, and in particular the depictions of people. I think a lot of it is meant to target things like the pictures that people circulate of intimate photographs of people that they broke up with and they vexed with them. It's called, what is it? It's called, there's a term for it, which I'm, of course, not remembering now. Revenge porn.
Oh yes.
Thank you, revenge porn. So,
Oh,
so I think he's looking at things like that. But I don't know if you can conflate a lady trying to whine on a police officer with revenge porn. I think there's a big jump there.
That's yeah.
That's
That's
culturally there's
that's
a whole bunch
reach.
of cultural hurdles you have to jump before you get from one to the next. So I felt some of those arguments were unusual. I know, for instance, the Media Association, I serve on the executive currently, has made some, has offered some comments to the Joint Select Committee that is discussing it. In fact, tomorrow morning, that's supposed to be a discussion that we're supposed to participate in. But I'm reading here. You would appreciate that photographers, some have commercial studios, and they take photographs of paying persons, pregnancy photographs, photographs in bathing suits, in skimpy underwear. And I'm not sure whether they're aware that before they take and they share, because some of these professional photographers, they share their pages on their pages and advertisements. This is a very strange sentence, that they need the consent of those who they photograph. So yeah, is there anybody in this room who would share pictures of someone that was shot in something that they might describe as an intimate way without telling the person?
absolutely not.
No,
Because
never.
Not here.
I'm not going to speak to you again. Really, I'm just not. I don't think you care, but I or would even notice. But it's just
And
that
again,
lasts long in the
it goes
business.
down to the ethical and moral
Yeah.
side of things. It
I
definitely
like those
goes
3
there.
points you brought forward there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is
Moral,
your
ethical, and
baseline?
Yeah, he
There's a
does
bunch
raise.
of photos that that I actually have that I just I won't post because again, you don't want to be known as for that, and it's just that it's not right to put it up there if that make any sense.
Yeah.
Again, ethical and moral part of it, it's important for people like us for sure.
Roger, you
All
say
right, but
something there.
he does have a point that everybody is a photographer now and they have cell phones and they can take pictures. I think actually there is a role for professional photographers who operate at a particular standard to articulate position. Sometimes it's rum shop old talk, if we ever get back to a rum shop, or over Sunday dinner and so on, when people say like, I take this picture of this girl, I say, well, you really shouldn't, to articulate that position. I think someone mentioned that there should be laws. The problem with laws is that laws are by necessity restrictive. And once you make a law about or against or restricting something, it is going to have a chilling effect on that thing. And it's very difficult to draft a law that has a chilling effect on the specific thing that you want dampened down. It's one of the reasons why we have these long discussions about laws before they are amended, because it's really kind of important that you can't stop it. You can't imagine every possibility, but you want to have a law that targets the problem without necessarily nuking everything around it.
And the thing is,
And
when it comes to Trinidad and Oslo on the lawmaking side of things, they paint everything with a broad brush. Case in point, wearing masks in cars, and they just be like, you know what, everybody have to wear the mask and just leave it as that. There's no exception to the rule, no nothing, nothing, nothing. So I feel as though if we look at that and try to now make copyright laws, they will just probably just paint it with a broad brush and be like, you know what, everybody has to follow this specific rule. Is that true?
um, not if you quarrel a lot. I remember that very first set of discussions we had. Wow, this has got to be like 40 years ago. Um, we had to go and explain repeatedly why visual artists belonged in the Copyright Act, because everybody could understand why Calypsonians' work should be protected, but they couldn't understand why, artists need to be protected, but they work up on the wall, like, no, their reproduction rights, their licensing. And we had to go argue this point over and over again. And sometimes there needs to be informed discussion about things like this. As it stands now, the Sexual Offences Act has a few things in it that are a little concerning, especially given that we're a country that vacillates between absolutely church going, totally straight on the path of our Lord Jesus, and then winding down in the street. So there's like, there's difficult things.
Understood. I feel as though we probably due for another case from the way back when. I think when you were talking about the case that everybody now call back to as a defining moment in copyright and infringement and stuff like that. I feel as though we might be due for that because of Trinidad people. We tend to burn to learn. So unless somebody comes up and say, "I'm going to take this to court," and there's like a big hullabaloo about it, then only then people will actually take it seriously. Or unless the government or somebody see that this certain thing is very profitable to them, then they would probably take it seriously. Other than that, I don't know. I feel as though we might be spinning top in mud for a while, but the progress that you guys have made from then to now, I think it's really, really remarkable, and I hope and pray that that the efforts that you guys are putting in now, so with all the discussions and discussions and discussions, I hope you actually do get the right person to talk to, and that person is willing to sit down and actually listen and not hear you, but listen to the concerns that we have as creative have. It's not only calypsonians or mask makers, but there are other people out there that could benefit from the the copyright and the new laws that should be put in place. And I don't know. I commend the work that you guys are doing, honestly, and I hope and pray that you get us with the rights and laws that we need to actually function in a more modern society. For just to wrap up things, where can us creative? I know you give us the website, which is intellectual property. Is there another website that we could probably go to that will help us understand copyright law or the whatever copyright law that could apply to us as creatives in Trinidad before we leave?
Yeah, the World Intellectual Property Office governs all copyright, but the TTIPO, I think, is pretty thorough about their examinations of copyright, and they're very sensitive to the issues that arise from reproduction rights and visual rights as well.
Okay. So, guys, is there anything else we want to add or ask Mark about? Because I know we over the hour, and we said we're going to cut off. So, if there's nothing else, I just want to say thank you, Mark, for joining us tonight. It was absolutely educational.
Very.
Just to know that we don't have image rights, it kind of changes the whole dynamic of street photography, and I hope people kind of understand that. Please be careful out there. So far we haven't probably have an issue with it. Nobody comes up and say, hey, you shouldn't take that, I will sue you, because we're not a suing country in Trinidad and Tobago. But thank you so
Not yet.
much. Well, not yet, for true. So thank you so much for being on board with us. And this conversation, I don't think it would ever end. So, guys, if you have any sort of information or any problems with copyright, I hope that Mark would be willing to help you out. You all could always check him out at his on his IG, Mark Lyndersay, and please look at his website and his techtT.com. Look at where technology is actually developing in Trinidad and Tobago. Mark, thank you again for tonight.
Thank you.
And
Yes,
thank you. I don't
excellent.
even know what to say after thanking you so much. And I don't want to embarrass you too much, but
I'm good.
thank you so much, Mark.
Good.
One thing I want to add, probably we could have persons drop their questions because I realize that some persons not coming through with their questions because of the limited time. We can't really entertain much more. Probably they could drop it in the Caribbean Creative Space group.
Yep.
And I don't know if Mark would have time to drop in, or probably we could forward it to him and get his input on that still.
Mind you, Mark is a very busy guy. Yeah? Remember,
Very, very.
he's lecturing in UWI. He's
I don't know
also
how he does it.
writing his op-eds and stuff, and he's an editor, writer. So anytime that Mark gives us, I would be like, oh, thank you, Lord Jesus, you have blessed me tonight.
I think before he goes,
Man,
I don't know
just remember.
if anyone will be interested. Is that will there be another upcoming photo walk again in 2022?
Oh,
by chance?
That was
Yes.
organized by the Photo Guild. I think
Okay.
that they try to have them monthly.
Oh, okay. Understand.
Yeah, that was fun. I reached the tail end, but it was very educational. Again, anything with Mark, you just had to sit back and absorb like a sponge.
again, well, Conrad, I will leave it to you to
No. I find you doing an excellent job tonight,
Oh,
man.
really,
Taking it
really?
in.
Don't
Yeah,
come and be like, no,
yeah.
Sion, every Thursday night is your night. No, you go ahead of everything.
It has been a while since you have graced us with your presence, and I must say tonight was
Well,
I
how
say
much nights I
it was
missed?
very
Missed
well
2
done.
nights or one?
I can't remember. I know one or two, but I know we missed you last week for sure.
Yeah.
And well, this week we missed Owen.
Oh,
Mr.
yes,
Photo.
of course. That's my boy.
Yeah.
So, guys, we're going to sign off tonight. And my local drug dealer, Conrad Affordable Imports, who always supply me for all my photo needs. Rani Horn Photos, one of my go-to wedding photographers that I always macro a lot. And Mark Lyndersay, a stalwart, as Conrad would usually say in the industry. I'm not going to go down his list again, but he is a well of information. And guys, please, if there's any sort of question that you need answer or anything like that, and you think Mark is probably good to, harass him. Don't tell him I sent you, but just harass him. Guys, have a good night, and we will see you guys next week, Thursday. I don't know what the topic might be, but we will come up with something and let you guys know.
All right then.
All right, guys.
Take care,
Kyle, you can
everyone.
kick us
Bye.
out.